Welcome to Simply Robotics, the podcast, a podcast exploring the animation industry one episode at a time. I'm your host, Monique. You can find me on all social media platforms at Simply Robotics. Robotics is spelled ROBOTIX. When listening to the show, use the hashtag SimplyRoboticsPod to join in on the conversation. So, my apologies, my bad. I missed an episode last month, but here is why. So, back in January, I made a bet with a friend that if they watched the first 2 hours of the R. Kelly documentary, I'd watch 2 hours of Game of Thrones. They kept up their end of the deal, so therefore I had to keep up my end. And so I watched the 2 episodes, and then as March came around and more people are talking about, winter is coming, all this sort of stuff, and I'm like, okay, I wonder if I can half binge Game of Thrones and catch up by the time the show comes back on TV. So basically, my life was derailed from like March, basically kind of like the end of February, all of March. Like my blog kind of took a backseat, the podcast took a backseat. It was just like Game of Thrones work. I was working 2 jobs at the time, panels, doing the diverse 2 panels, and Game of Thrones. Like I was watching Game of Thrones like on the bus. I was like sneaking and watching it like at work during breaks. Like I even like, excuse me, I took a trip down to like Maryland, and I was even trying to watch on the bus down there. Like any opportunity I had, I had to watch it. And like I understand the hype now. Like I can't say like, oh my gosh, I love Game of Thrones. Like I like it's the best show ever, all this sort of stuff. Like I can't say so because it has a lot of things that I personally don't like. Like for instance, zombies. Like that's how I see White Walkers. I consider them to be zombies because are they not like the Walking Dead, you know? And then also there's a lot of violence. There's like, people are getting slashed up and stabbed up and sliced and split in half and heads crushed and all sorts of stuff. It's pretty gory. It's I shouldn't say gore. It's kind of gory. It's pretty graphic. It's very bloody. All those type of things that like I don't find personally entertaining. Those things stress me out. I have to watch those things and then definitely watch something much lighter afterwards. Like I couldn't even do that watching the show because I just wanted to make it through. But usually if I watch something like that, I would watch like Steven Universe or Adventure Time. I'd watch something very like light and playful and colorful after that. But I say all that to say that I did catch up in time. And I'm so happy. At the time I'm recording this episode, it's I've survived. I personally am recovering the Battle of Winterfell. I also saw Endgame this weekend, and I am recovering from that. I feel like the Battle of Winterfell stressed me out way more than Endgame, and that also leads me to why this episode is like so late. Like I'm recording it, and it's gonna come out in about like 2 hours after I finish. Is because after I binged Game of Thrones, I had to catch up on like all the Marvel movies that I didn't see because I felt like I wanted to go into Endgame having watched as much of them as possible. Last year with Infinity War, I just watched like movie recaps and like what you should know before you watch Infinity War. I watched a whole bunch of videos like that, and I saw about maybe like 7 Marvel movies just like throughout my life. But I've never seen before like this year. I've never seen Iron Man movies. I've never seen Thor. No, no, I'm lying. I did see one Thor movie, but okay. So I've never saw Guardians of the Galaxy. I feel like I saw only the first Avengers movie, and then Infinity War. There was like just too much that I haven't seen, so I was like, let me just watch all the MCU movies now that I was supposed to be watching them before Game of Thrones, and Game of Thrones just threw that all off. So I basically had like 2 weeks to watch about 14 movies, and I only watched 12. I still have to watch the first Ant-Man and Spider-Man. No, I have to watch 3. I have to watch the first Ant-Man, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and I have to watch Spider-Man Homecoming. Those are the only 3 like I didn't see in time. But I mean, it wasn't like I still fine. I saw Endgame, and it wasn't no big deal. However, I'm very very happy. The night before I watched Age of Ultron, and I'm so happy I watched it because it really pieced together so many questions I had, and I was like, so many people said so many bad things about Age of Ultron that it wasn't on my radar to watch this. But then after I watched this, I was like, this literally solved all the questions that I had. And I should have watched this such a long, long time ago. But yeah, so I watched all the MCU movies in like story order, so not the order of the release, but so that structurally it would make sense. Oh, and then I still last week before Endgame, like 2 days before, I saw Captain Marvel or Marvel. I'll probably never pronounce it like that. So that all like helped to make things like make sense. So I say all that to say that that's the main reason why my episode didn't come out last month. And this episode is struggling so hard to come out because like my computer's down, the computer that I use to record the episode. So I'm using a different computer and it's all fine. I'm making it work. I will not try to record on my old computer anymore until I could take it to Geek Squad because I just lost like a half hour of content. I'm like, great. Now I have to say all this over with the same energy and all that stuff, which is no big deal because it's been such a long time since I did this and I miss you guys and I miss doing this. But now it's been about like 5-ish, almost 6 minutes of me rambling, and we should get into the main topic. And since we're talking about shows that I'm binging and watching and stuff like that, a couple people told me about this Netflix show, or technically it's a Netflix anthology, and it's called Love, Death, and Robots. And I had like about like 2 or 3 people that know that I'm into animation and stuff like that say like, hey, Monique, you should check this out. I think it's really cool. I think you'd really like this. I want to hear what you think about it. So I was like, okay, add that to my list. But when I saw Jen, former guest from episode 3, she had like a whole thread about this. And I was like, ooh, like, wow. So I'm like reading through her tweets. And, she's just talking about like how you can tell that all the films were directed by men, like they have a definite like male gaze to everything. And she was talking about adult animation and like mature content, and that it's not synonymous, excuse me, with like porn. However, there is usually some sort of nudity or like very like explicit or graphic natures and things like that, and just like wanting to see more of a spectrum of adult animation. So I was like, well, let me check this out. So my intention was to watch all of them. I believe it's about like 17 to 19 short films in this anthology. However, with watching like Game of Thrones and the MCU movies, I couldn't fit this in. I was able to watch 5, so I'm just gonna like recap the 5 that I watched and kind of keep it kind of short. They're gonna probably be kind of sort of spoilers, but you're gonna watch them for yourself and see how much I spoiled it if I really did. So this anthology starts off with Sony's Edge. It's directed by Dave Wilson, animated by Blur Studio. The description reads, in the underground world of beastly fights, Sonny is unbelievable as long as she keeps her edge. So basically, it's like telepathic monster fighting. It's like almost like the Matrix or something, where they plug into like this other world and they become monsters, beasts, and it's like cage fighting. I guess it's like, yeah, like a monsters meets, or monster creatures meets the Matrix meets like a Fight Club type of thing. So it's very graphic and very violent. The characters, they look like they're from a video game. It feels like when you're playing, I guess, like a game like on story mode, and they kind of have like the little dramatization stuff in between you actually completing your missions. It feels like that. There's some mild nudity. There was a bit of like heavy seduction between these two female characters. At times it kind of felt to me like I was at a thesis screening, or like, like the animation fest more so, and things like that. I didn't really get the story. At the end of it, I was like, what are we really doing here? That's why I said it felt like a thesis to me, in sense. Like it was really showcasing for me skill sets more than story. Like look at the textures, look at the lighting, look at the models, look at it. Like, I don't know, like I can easily have seen it being like, look at like real time rendering, that type of thing. So the story, ooh, yeah, like I said, it was pretty graphic with the violence. So to keep it moving, the next one that I watched was Three Robots, directed by Victor Maldonado and Alfred Torres. Sorry, I hope I didn't butcher your name. It was animated by Blow Studio. The description reads, long after the fall of humanity, 3 robots embark on a sightseeing tour of a post-apocalyptic city. This was very cute. I liked the character designs. I enjoyed how they keep making like incorrect assumptions about how things and items were probably used. It was very funny and entertaining. I enjoyed how the characters played off of one another. Like I said, the character designs. Towards the end, though, there's a cat, and I really was enjoying the cat's dynamic and inclusion to the story. But the cat starts to like speak English, and I was like, oh no! And I felt like that kind of like brought everything down. Like it would have been, I almost would have preferred in hindsight if the cat was talking like a cat language. Not, and then maybe it could have meowed, but like if it had subtitles instead. But once the cat like broke that wall and is talking English to the robots, I was like, I'm not really feeling this anymore. But it ended like immediately after, so you didn't have to deal with the talking cat for long. The third film I watched was The Witness. That was directed by Alberto Malgo. Sorry. Animated by Pink TV. After the description reads, after seeing a brutal murder, a woman flees from the killer through the streets of a surreal city. This one also has a very video game kind of style. It's hypersexual. The woman that's running, she's an exotic dancer. There's like in the scene where she's doing her routine, I'm like, it is clear to me that like this is a man's project because of some of the attention to detail on her body. And like what am I thinking of? Like I'm thinking like of the end cloth and simulation and make sure things are moving the way that a real woman's body would move. And again, the attention to detail of the woman's body, I was like, wow, they probably spent a lot of time making sure they got all these things right. There's also a scene towards the end where like the killer and this woman, they're like in the same space. So she starts running and she's running in her stilettos, like her stripper stilettos. And I'm just like, she is doing a really great job at running that long and that far in these things. But then we see her as she's about to like run up some steps. She kicks off her shoes and she keeps running. And I was like, girl, you should have done that so long ago, because that just would have been realistic. But all in all, I really did like the city. When the characters were outside, it was like, I don't know, I've never been there, but it seemed like it could have been like a Tokyo type of thing in the building. And I did like her character design. She was pretty artsy. She kind of reminds me of Harley Quinn. If you, I think so. I think that's a good relation. Moving forward, the next short film is Suits, directed by Frank Balson, animated by Blur Studio. The description reads, a community of farmers use their homemade mechs to defend their families from a home invasion. It's exactly that. Like, that's probably the best, most literal description from all these things. So visually, to me, it looks a bit like a PC game or a TV show. And I keep going back and forth. Like, it's probably more so like a PC game type of look. Me personally, I guess this is due to me watching a lot of Game of Thrones and the MCU movies. I'm like fatigued with alien invasions and like creature invasions and things that aren't humans coming to like harm and kill humans and animals. So the subject matter for me was just a little bit tiring. However, that didn't take away from this being like a pretty captivating film. Like I was engaged, I was following it. It did keep my attention. I don't have like anything negative to say like about it really. The last one that I saw, and unfortunately I only saw five. It's called The Sucker of Souls, directed by Owen Sullivan, animated by Studio La Cachette. Description reads, unleashed by an archaeological dig, a bloodthirst demon battles a teams of mercenaries armed with cats. Yes, that's exactly the description. Is written like that. So this was the first non 3D short, and it's the fifth one. It still was pretty graphic for 2D. Like there's a lot of blood. Um, like some genitalia revealed in it. It held my attention the whole time just because I was like, this is like really, really bizarre in some of the ways like the characters were going about handling this demon. This demon is essentially like a vampire, but it's like a creature take on a vampire. And it straddles the line between appearing like a human and appearing more so like a creature, which was pretty cool. But yeah, it was very graphic and it left with a big cliffhanger. Like I feel easily this could have been a short series. Like each of these shorts in this anthology, I don't believe are more than 20 minutes long, if they are even 20 minutes long. This one had to be one of the shorter ones. And I felt like this can easily either be like a 30 or like 45-minute project, or it could just be a couple like 13-minute videos just to tell the whole story, because the way that it left off was definitely like there's still more to be seen. So, in conclusion, before I go into my thoughts, here's Jen's tweet. I'm just going to read word for word. Jen Hurler of Animation Complex, I should say. She writes, "My other big beef is just that of the films I saw, I think 15 out of 19 so far, only 4 or 5 of them weren't explicitly sexual and or a gore fest. Adult animation seems to mean raunchy humor, gore or extreme violence, or sexual content. It's very reductive, and that reflects in this anthology. Maybe the opportunity to have such a high budget, mature audience short is too rare to not be tempted to go in guns blazing, but I wish there were more variety in general, not just in Love, Death, and Robots, but for the adult animation genre." And I feel like I completely agree. Like I said, I only saw 5 out of like 19, so I still have a lot more to see. But of that 5, it's already like hypersexual, very violent, very gory, very dark. And it's like, wow, it's called Love, Death, and Robots. And I feel like Love is like, out of the 5, again, the least the least element that's just like depicted in this thing. The things that it's like not love, it's more like a lust or like a real sexuality, not even sensual. And I think that too speaks to what Jen was saying in her thread, just the fact that everything is directed by men. And I, maybe should have looked more deeper into the credits after each film, just to see how many women were a part of the team, because I don't know about producers or if story, but it just felt like despite having female characters in these films, there wasn't really a female. It doesn't feel like a female presence was in the production part. So I'm gonna continue watching the anthology. I can't see myself binging it just because of the context. Like I said at the top of the show, like super violent, gory, and graphic things, they just like they do disturb my spirit. So I have to come up off of those things and end up watching something much lighter and happier. So I can't see myself like trying to binge the rest of this anthology, but I am invested and interested and continue to watching it and coming to terms with my own feelings toward the projects and stuff like that, and also just exploring the different studios that did animate these products and see what other stuff and content that they worked on. So from the 5 I saw, I wouldn't say any of them are even bad. The production quality is very up there. The sound design, the sound effects, like all of it is really top tier work. I feel like it's just subject matter, and like Jen said in her tweets, I would want more from like mature or adult animation. I feel like the animation's a medium. Like I've said this all the time, and I'm one of those people that believe those things. So I like to see the medium expand, and I like to see it explore different aspects and different stories and stuff like that. But this is definitely a typecast when it comes to mature and adult animation. Now on to animation news. This is going to be a bit lengthy because there's a lot of stuff to cover, because like I said originally, I was going to do an episode in March, so I was collecting news from back then. First thing we're getting into is Batman versus the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. This is an animated movie. As reported by sci-fi.com, the film is a collaboration between DC Entertainment and Nickelodeon. It's based on a 2015 Batman Turtles crossover comic by James Tynion IV and Freddie Williams II. It will be available for digital download and on Blu-ray. In the show notes, I'd have the YouTube link to the trailer. I'm looking forward to it. I love the Ninja Turtles. I've been struggling with their, how should I say, their multiple re-imaging. However, I love the Ninja Turtles. So at first I thought this was an unusual mashup, but as I watched the trailer, I became more interested in this. So, long story short, because you're not going to watch the trailer right now, you're going to finish listening to the episode first. The Turtles end up in Gotham following Shredder, and then they scrap with Batman for a little while, and then they team up with Batgirl and Robin and Batman to take down the Joker and Shredder and some other Gotham villains that I'm personally not too familiar with. But that's that. Next, Toy Story 4, there was a new trailer came out, or was it the actual trailer? At this point, I can't remember how many trailers are out for Toy Story. But if you haven't seen it, also a link to the trailer would be in the show notes. In this trailer, Bonnie makes a new friend, Forky. Woody emphasizes that they have to look out for Forky because he's Bonnie's favorite toy. However, Forky is not with the program and he jumps out of the moving RV that they are in because Bonnie and her family are going on a trip. Woody falls out trying to rescue him. They end up at an amusement park and reunite with Bo. Remember, like Bo Peep from back in? Yeah, okay. So it looks like they're it's a lost toy journey, and we don't know if they will make it back to Bonnie. Personally, I did not want another Toy Story movie. Like, dun dun dun, shocker alert. I felt like they did a really good job with Toy Story 3 and in wrapping up all the characters and stuff like that. And I personally would have really appreciated Toy Story shorts, Toy Story like holiday programming and stuff like that. Maybe, like, bumpers, things before movies and TV shows. I didn't really want another Toy Story movie. So I am going to watch it because Pixar always releases a movie kind of around my birthday, so it's like a personal tradition for me to go see it. But I'm just interested. I feel like at this point, like something dramatic does have to happen. Like a major character may not come back, or something, because like why are we here? Speaking of Disney, there was also the Aladdin trailer finally came out because we were getting just teasers before and everybody was really shaky about Will Smith being the genie. Not that we didn't think that he can do it, but just that it was looking a little shaky. So originally, I was not interested in a live action adaptation of Aladdin. Aladdin's one of my favorites, like good music. I was just all here for it. I wanted to be Jasmine when I grew up, so I just didn't want a live action. And like I said, the earlier glimpses of the teasers and stuff like that, it just wasn't really enticing. So the same way that I personally don't want a live action Lion King, I just didn't want a live action Aladdin. I didn't want a live action Dumbo either, and I'm still gonna try and check that one out. But after watching this trailer, I was pleasantly surprised, and I was like, "Oh, I'm like into this. Like, I am pretty sure I'm going to watch this, if not opening weekend, the week it comes out, because now I'm invested. I feel like so far it looks pretty good, and nothing really is jarring out to me that's not in alignment with the cartoon, and it shouldn't be exactly like the cartoon either. Like it's live action for a reason. So it looks like overall that it would be a really good time. Clearly Disney's been doing a lot of things, so I have even more Disney animation news. And it was on March 21st, Variety reported that dozens of 21st century Fox executives were given pink slips in the first wave of what is expected to be as many as 4,000 layoffs across the units Disney acquired at the Fox Corp. So Disney bought 21st century, like not Fox, but like the what was it, like the Fox Entertainment, and 21st Century Fox is under that umbrella, Blue Sky's under that umbrella, and stuff like that. So I have a link to the Variety article so you can read more about that Disney merger. So if I guess the most, not most, but one of the important things is that Disney has the X-Men franchise, and people were talking about like the X-Men now being a part of the MCU and like all that sort of stuff that I am talking about and I completely don't understand, but I can sympathize and empathize with the hype for it. If that means that we can get Storm properly casted, I'm all for it. I almost feel like the whole thing needs to be scrapped, recasted, start all over, but give us a break. Because there's been a lot of X-Men movies and they haven't been that good. And I feel like we just need to cleanse our palette of X-Men. And that may mean taking a couple years to not do something X-Men related and then come back with it and surprise us and remind us why we loved X-Men in the first place. So also I was featured in this Broadly article which was titled The New Pipeline for Black Women in Animation. And I was very shocked at first to even when I was contacted to be a part of this article and to be interviewed. And I just spoke about being a black woman in the animation industry, how I'm contributing, how I'm trying to open the doors for other black women coming up after me, and what I hope to still do. Like I'm still, which is sometimes like wacky, but I still feel, I'm not even still feel like I am still in the very beginning parts of my career. And I feel like just between doing the podcast and the panels and just my online presence, that I'm probably one of the few visible black women in the animation industry. And that may lead people to forget that I'm still in the very beginning. Like, there's still a lot I have to learn. There's still a lot I hope to contribute, preferably to a studio environment. And I'm just learning. But I'm just the type of person that likes to give back, even though there's so much for me to know. I like to share what I have learned along the way so far. But it was pretty dope being in the article. I was featured with a lot of other great Black women, some that I know, some that I don't know yet, that I hope to meet and work with and, collaborate with in some way or another later down the road. So shifting over, Vancouver animators win overtime pay in sausage party dispute. This was reported by Cartoon Brew. Link will be in the show notes. So, in an excerpt, the Canadian government, after the British Columbia Employment Standards branch ruled that the workers were entitled to receive overtime pay for their work on the 2016 film, animators who claimed they had not been paid overtime for their work on that film. So that's what this whole thing was about, which is like crazy. It's 2019, and these animators were not paid overtime. And if I have learned anything about anything, by working professionally, is that it's so easy for deadlines to, in essence, kind of creep up on you, and things have to be done at like any means necessary. And it's unfortunate because I know those animators put in long nights, early mornings, weekends, holidays to help this film get fulfilled and be able to be put out in time, and they should most definitely be compensated properly. And especially, I don't know what Sausage Party did at the box office, but if a film makes their budget and then some, you have to pay the employees, the workers, properly for their overtime. So going back to the article, it says Cinecite had originally claimed that employees were not entitled to the overtime pay specified in the province's Employment Standards Act because the animation artists were high technology professionals developing information systems. The Employment Standard Branch Investigation Officer, however, ruled that the exclusion did not apply to studio workers whose primary job was using commercially available software to create visuals. So you hear the runaround, like, not cool at all. Not cool. The last bit of animation news came out yesterday. Phil Lord and Chris Miller are developing Marvel TV Universe with a 9-figure Sony overall deal. This was reported by The Hollywood Reporter, link in the description box. Phil Lord and Chris Miller are moving their overall deal from 20th Century Fox TV to Sony Pictures TV. Under the pact, Lord and Miller will create and develop their own comedy and drama prospects for broadcast, cable, and streaming, as well as supervise the other writers' projects. Additionally, the pair will also be involved in developing a suite of television series based on Sony's universe of Marvel characters. Those include Spider-Man and all his villains like Green Goblin, Venom, a sequel with Tim Hardy's in the works, Morbius, which has a live-action feature in the works with Jared Leto, and Black Cat and Silver Sable, both in development on the feature side. Select TV projects related to Sony's Marvel characters will be produced in partnership with former Sony Pictures Entertainment co-chairman Amy Pascal. Also possibly on the table, all the characters from Into the Spider-Verse. It's unclear which Marvel characters Lord and Miller will take on. So I feel like these are kind of like our golden guys. Like, we kind of love everything that they do, everything that they touch, just like it just works. So I'm happy for them. I think this will be interesting. There's just so many streaming services and platforms that I just wonder how all that is going to continue to be handled. But that reaches the end of my animation news and ultimately the end of this episode. First, I want to thank you all for listening and supporting, and for, when y'all listen, y'all comment back and y'all tell me, you engage with me and things like that. So I'm appreciative of that. We didn't have any guests on this episode, so it was just me, and that's why it's shorter than, actually, it's like the regular time. This is about how long I would want a solo episode to be. You can find me on all social media platforms at Simply Robotics. That's SIMPLYROBOTIX. Excuse me. You can also just visit my website. You can see the blog posts that I've had in the meantime. You can see the diverse tunes panel videos and the audio. When you listen to the podcast, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, a rate and review on iTunes. up next, I would like to tackle the How to Train Your Dragon trilogy. I have never seen any of the movies. I know what's wrong with me. I haven't seen it. So I'm hoping to, not I'm hoping, the next episode, I will watch all three and I'll be reviewing my thoughts and my feelings and how crazy and silly I am for like not seeing any of these movies. And also what seeing these movies back to back, what a difference that makes than spacing them out in years. So thank you again and take care and be well. Bye.